Welcome to WT History. In this series, we list all the major events that happened in the world in a year, starting from 1776 to 2024. On January 1st, Ottawa in Ontario is officially incorporated as a city, marking its growth and importance in Canada's development. On January 23rd, the very first bridge across the Mississippi River opens in what is now Minneapolis. This wooden structure, a forerunner of the Father Louis Hennepin Bridge, symbolizes the expansion of transportation across America's great waterways. On January 26th, the Point-No-Point Treaty is signed in the Washington Territory, in which local Native American tribes ceded vast tracts of land to the United States in exchange for promises of fishing rights and payments. On February 12th, Michigan State University is founded as the nation's pioneer land-grant college. Just 3 days later, on February 15th, the Western North Carolina Railroad is incorporated by the North Carolina legislature, connecting Salisbury to the Western Mountains. And on February 22nd, Pennsylvania State University is founded as the Farmers High School of Pennsylvania. On March 3rd, Congress allocates $30,000 to create the United States Camel Corps, an effort to use camels for transport in the deserts of the Southwest. On March 16th, abolitionists establish Bates College in Lewiston, Maine, promoting progressive education. On March 30th, elections are held for the first Kansas territorial legislature, but thousands of pro-slavery border ruffians cross in from Missouri, skewing the vote and creating a pro-slavery government. In July, the Bank of Toronto is incorporated in Canada. A century later, in 1955, it will merge with the Dominion Bank to form today's Toronto-Dominion Bank. On July 1st, the Quinault Treaty is signed. The Quinault Include tribes cede their lands in Washington Territory to the United States, another chapter in the displacement of Native peoples. The very next day, on July 2nd, the Kansas Territorial Legislature meets in Pawnee. It quickly begins passing harsh pro-slavery laws, deepening the conflict. On July 4th, literature makes history as Walt Whitman self-publishes his groundbreaking poetry collection, Leaves of Grass in Brooklyn. By November 21st, violence erupts in Bleeding, Kansas, as clashes between pro-slavery and anti-slavery settlers escalate, leading to the so-called Wakarusa War. That same season, literature again flourishes. On November 10th, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow publishes the Song of Hiawatha in Boston. Meanwhile, firearms manufacturing advances as Samuel Colt incorporates his company as the Colt's Patent Firearms Manufacturing Company. He opens a major new factory, the Colt Armory in Hartford, Connecticut, cementing his role in industrial weaponry. On the January 29th, Lord Aberdeen resigns as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom over his handling of the Crimean War. On February 5th, Lord Palmerston succeeds him as Prime Minister. In Russia, great change arrives on March 2nd. Upon the death of Tsar Nicholas I, Alexander II ascends the throne, a ruler destined to oversee reform and modernization. On April 16th, Emperor Napoleon III of France and Empress Eugenie begin a 6-day state visit to Britain, reinforcing Franco-British ties. 2 days later, on April 18th, the famous Bordeaux Wine Classification of 1855 is published at Napoleon's request for the Exposition Universelle. On May 15th, the Exposition Universelle itself officially opens in Paris. On the same day, Britain is shaken by the Great Gold Robbery, when thieves steal gold from a moving train, one of the earliest crimes of its kind. On June 15th, Britain abolishes the stamp duty on newspapers, opening the door to free mass media. Just 2 weeks later, on June 29th, the Daily Telegraph begins publication in London. Tourism enters a new era on July 4th, when travel pioneer Thomas Cook leads his first group of British tourists across the continent, visiting Belgium and the Paris Exposition. On August 1st, Monte Rosa, the second highest summit in the Alps, is first ascended. Later that month, on August 18th, Queen Victoria of Britain and Prince Albert travel to Paris for a 10-day state visit. This is the first official visit of a reigning British monarch to France since 1413. On September 3rd, London hosts the last ever Bartholomew Fair, ending a centuries-old tradition. On September 9th, the Crimean War reaches a turning point as Sevastopol falls to French and British troops. On September 27th, Alfred Tennyson reads from his poetry collection Maud and Other Poems at the home of Robert and Elizabeth Browning. The pre-Raphaelite artist Dante Gabriel Rossetti even sketches Tennyson as he reads. On October 17th, Henry Bessemer patents his revolutionary steelmaking process, while that same day the Battle of Kinburn is fought in the Crimean War. It marks the first use of modern ironclad warships in combat. On December 22nd, the Metropolitan Board of Works is established in London, a major step in urban infrastructure. Around this time, German chemist Friedrich Gacke isolates cocaine for the first time, beginning a new chapter in pharmacology. On January 5th, Ramon Castilla begins his third term as president of Peru. On the January 23rd, New Zealand is rocked by the massive Wairarapa earthquake, measuring around magnitude 8.2. Between 5 and 9 people lose their lives. On January 27th, the Panama Railway becomes the first rail line to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, transforming global trade. On February 11th, in Ethiopia, Kasa Haile is crowned Emperor Tewodros II, launching a new era in Ethiopian history. On March 17th, a typing army of 350,000 invades Anhui province. Just weeks later, on April 3rd, Nepal invades Tibet across the towering Himalayas, beginning the Nepalese-Tibetan War. On April 7th, the Battle of Kaba takes place in Fiji, with the Kingdom of Tonga intervening in local wars. On May 1st, Van Diemen's Land gains self-government and separates administratively from New South Wales. Just 2 days later, on May 3rd, the American adventurer William Walker sets sail with mercenaries from San Francisco, heading south to attempt to conquer Nicaragua. On May 22nd, the Australian province of Victoria is separated from New South Wales. By July 16th, all Australian colonies are granted self-government by Britain, a major milestone in their political development. On September 29th, the port of Iloilo in the Philippines opens to international trade, along with the ports of Sual and Zamboanga. On October 24th, Van Diemen's Land is officially renamed Tasmania. 2 days later, on November 17th, David Livingstone becomes the first European to set eyes on Victoria Falls in Africa, one of the natural wonders of the world. On December 11th, Ignacio Comonfort becomes president of Mexico. Meanwhile, the third plague pandemic begins in Yunnan, China. This bubonic plague will eventually spread worldwide, killing more than 12 million people in India and China and an estimated 15 million across the globe. By the end of the year, palm oil exports from West Africa to Britain reach 40,000 tons, marking a new stage in global trade. Thanks for watching WT History. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more yearly journeys through the past.